Hello everyone. Till now we have discussed about the structure of atom given by Rutherford and then corrections made by the Bohr. Uh, by the successive studies, the not just the structure of atom but also the study about nucleus was made. In this class, we will talk about the composition of the nucleus. We will discuss the particles which are found to be existing in the nucleus, and then we will talk about nuclear size and its density. Then we will talk about the limitations of Bohr's atomic model. Bohr's atomic model was an improvement to the Rutherford's atomic model, but still there was some limitations or shortcomings where Bohr's atomic model fails to explain the things. We will talk about these. And in the last, we will talk about discovery and production of the X-rays, which are of very wide use in present times. So let us start with the composition of the nucleus. We will talk about the particles which are found to exist inside the nucleus, and or in other ways we can say the particles which form the nucleus. So according to Rutherford, the nucleus is the very central region where maximum mass of the atom is supposed to be concentrated. It is positively charged due to the presence of protons, and there are other particles other than the protons are the neutrons. So each and every atom has the protons and neutrons in its nucleus except hydrogen atom, because it has only one electron which is revolving around the nucleus having only one proton. So this is the only difference. So this was about composition of the nucleus. There are some parameters or properties which are related with the protons, electrons and neutrons, just like their masses and charges. Proton is a fundamental particle which has the charge 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, which is of same amount as the charge on the electron, but this is of opposite kind. Electron has a negative charge, then proton has a positive charge of the same amount, right? And the mass of proton is about 1836 times heavier or larger than the electron, mass of the electron. So that means proton is quite heavier than the electron. Its mass is given to be 1.67 into 10 to the power minus 27 kilogram. Similarly, there are some things which are related with the neutron. Neutron is electrically neutral. It carries no charge. So it has no electric properties. And its mass is about 1840 times heavier than the electron. That means neutron is heavier than electron as well as proton. And its mass is given to be 1.675 into 10 to the power minus 27 kilogram. So to represent an atom, we require the number of electrons, protons and the number of neutrons present in the atom. So we have different symbols for this. The very first one is the atomic number. So what is the atomic number of an atom? It is the number of protons present in the nucleus. So it is represented by Z. And what is atomic mass number? What is the mass number of an atom? It is the sum of protons and number of neutrons present in the nucleus. So that means the number of protons and number of neutrons present in the nucleus constitutes this atomic mass number, or we can say mass of the nucleus. And atomic mass unit is the unit which we make use of here to represent the mass of the atom. So one atomic mass unit, it is nothing but 1/12th of the mass of one atom of the carbon. This is how one atomic mass unit is taken. So one atomic mass unit, it is equal to 1/12th the mass of one atom of the carbon. So how do we calculate 1 AMU? So it is just 1/12th multiplied by the mass of one atom of the carbon. So carbon has 12 atoms. So it is divided by 12 gram of carbon has this much number of carbon atom, and this number 6.023 into 10 to the power 23, it is the Avogadro number, the number of atoms present, right? So this is how we calculate the value of one atomic mass unit. So which is equal to 1.66 into 10 to the power minus 27 kilogram. We take the atomic mass unit for the calculation of atomic mass unit, the mass of one carbon atom. This is so because the mass of the carbon atom is so precise. Let us move to the next thing about the size and density of the nucleus. These are the two terms which are associated with the nucleus. Size of the nucleus is known by knowing the radius of the nucleus, because inside the atom, the nucleus is lying at very central region in the form of a very small sphere. But the boundaries of this nucleus, they are not very clear or well defined. However, in general, the radius of the nucleus is given by r, which is equal to r naught into a to the power 1 by 3. Here r naught is a constant and its value is given by 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 5 meter, and it will remain for same for all the nuclei for which we are calculating the radius. And a is the mass number of the nucleus. So if we are willing to measure the radius, or we can say size of the nucleus by measuring the radius of the nucleus, then we need the mass number only for that particular nuclei. So the radius of the nucleus ranges from 1 Fermi to 10 Fermi. 1 Fermi, it is given by 10 to the power minus 15 meter. So if this is the radius of the nucleus, then we can find out the nuclear volume of the nucleus, which is given by 4 by 3 pi r cube, because the nucleus is taken as a small sphere. So it will be equal to 4 by 3 pi r naught cube into a. So from here it is clear that the nuclear volume will be directly proportional to the mass number, and also the radius of the nucleus, it is also directly proportional to the mass number. More is the mass number of the nucleus, more will be the radius, and hence more will be its volume. Now we move to the next thing, which is about nuclear density. So in order to calculate the nuclear density, we require the mass and volume of the nucleus. So mass of the nucleus is represented by this. So A is the atomic number, mass number of the nucleus. So it will be A AMU in terms of atomic mass unit, because 1 AMU, it is already calculated to be this. So therefore total mass of a nucleus will depend upon its mass number, A into 1 AMU, and the volume, it is already known to be this. So on substituting all parameters except A, because A will depend upon what kind of atom we are making use of, so the value of the volume comes out to be this. So whenever we are willing to find out the nuclear density, we divide mass with the volume, so which cancels A in both mass and volume, and remaining terms are just calculated, and it gives us the density of the nucleus, which is 2.29 into 10 to the power 17 kilogram per meter cube. So this is too large. Now we can sum up the terms here about the composition of the nucleus and the various terms associated. Very first thing is that nuclear density does not depend upon the mass number. So all nuclei are equally dense. The nuclear density has extremely large value. The value, as we have seen, it is of order of 10 to the power 17, which is very large. Such high density are found in white dwarf stars, which contain mainly nuclear matter. The nuclear density is not uniform throughout the nucleus. The nucleus lies at the very central region. The nuclear density inside, or we can say mass of the nucleus, is not distributed uniformly throughout the nucleus. Its maximum value of lie at the center and decreases gradually as it moves away from the center. Another term to note here is that the nuclear radius is the distance. What we take the nuclear radius? It is the distance from the center of the nucleus at which the density of the nuclear matter decreases to 1/2 of its maximum value at the center. That means the nuclear radius is not taken from the center and to the point up to which the nuclear mass is distributed, right? But nuclear radius is the distance, that distance from the center of the nucleus at which the density of the nuclear matter or nucleus, it becomes half of its value at the center, which will be maximum value, right? So that is how we take the nuclear radius. Let us move to the next thing, which is about limitations of Bohr's atomic model. So till now we have discussed many things on the basis of Rutherford's model and the Bohr's model, but still Bohr's model have some limitations. We can have a look at these. Very first thing is that it is the violation of Heisenberg uncertainty principle, because Bohr's model so precisely says that the electron remains in specific orbit. Quantization of angular momentum is so precise that it is opposite to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which simply means says that what Heisenberg uncertainty principle says, it says that it is not possible to predict the position and momentum of the particle at the same time, right? But Bohr's model considers the electron to remain present in the specific orbit according to its quantization of angular momentum. So that is opposite to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So that is the difficulty with the Bohr's model. Second is Bohr's model is very limited in terms of size. That means poor spectral prediction were obtained when larger atoms are in consideration. Another limitation is that it cannot predict the relative intensity of the spectral lines. It cannot compare the intensity of the radiations which are emitted out. It does not explain the Zeeman effect. That means when these spectral lines of an atom, they are subjected to some magnetic field, right? Uniform magnetic field, then these spectral lines further split out into their components. So this effect of splitting of the spectral lines into their constituent colors or further components on the application of some magnetic field, this is called as Zeeman effect. The Bohr's model was not able to explain how this is happening. Similarly, there is another effect when the spectral lines split into the components in presence of the electric field also, and that effect is called as the Stark effect. Again, there was no explanation from Bohr's model on that. Next limitation is that Bohr's model does not account for the fact that accelerating electrons do not emit electromagnetic radiations. So this was also the limitation. Bohr's model could not explain that the accelerating electrons do not emit the radiations. And one more limitation of the Bohr's model is that it considers electron as a particle only. But we already know that electron also possesses the wave nature. So these were some limitations of the Bohr's model. Now we have come to the last topic of this class, which is on X-rays. So X-rays was discovered by W.K. Rontgen in 1895. During this discovery was accidental, because during the study of discharge which this scientist W.K. Rontgen was doing through gases at very low pressure, he was carrying out this study experiment. Then what he observed, that the nearby photographic plates, he had the photographic plates placed nearby, they were affected by this discharge. There were some spots, and also the fluorescent screen placed in the vicinity nearby place, it becomes luminous. So when he noticed all these effects, he made his further studies and he come to the understanding that there are some rays called as X-rays, because at that time he does not what name he can give these rays. So he called these X-rays. So till now they are used in the name of X-rays. So X-rays are produced when fast moving electrons strikes the target of some high atomic weight. That means the fast moving electron, highly accelerating electrons, when they are made to hit a target of some atom which has a very high weight, then the X-rays are produced. So the setup, or we can say a device for the production of X-rays, it is called as X-ray tube. In X-ray tube there are three things mainly. The first one is the source of electron. Source of electron is this filament. As you can see in this diagram, this is the filament. It is heated by AC voltage so as to heat it to very high temperature, and then at very high temperature when it is heated, it starts emitting out the electrons. These electrons are made to travel in one fine stream in one direction, right? Then second thing, this X-ray tube is have a device of very high voltage to accelerate these electrons to very high speeds. So the purpose to make the electrons move very high speed is achieved by using a device of very high voltage, about 10 to the power 4 volts, 10,000 volts. That means this makes the electron move very fast at high speed towards the target. And third thing, it is a target of high atomic weight. It is the tungsten here which is used, and it is placed on some copper block, right? So whenever these filament, they are heated to very high temperature by AC voltage, they start emitting out these electrons. These electrons will move anywhere but some arrangement is made to make these electron travel along one direction along a fine stream. Then these fast moving electrons are made to accelerate to very high speed by the application of the potential of very high voltage, about 10 to the power 4 volts. Then these fast moving electrons are made to fall or strike the target. Target is a metal of high atomic weight, which is tungsten here, which is fixed on a copper block. So when these fast moving electrons, accelerated electrons, hit this target of tungsten of high atomic weight fixed on this copper block, they start emitting out the radiations called as X-rays. This target is inclined at some 45 degrees so that the radiations X-rays which are emitted out, they can be taken out in this direction. Because the electrons are very high, having very high speeds, so large amount of heat will be produced, so large that it may melt this setup X-ray tube apparatus. So to avoid this, some cooling system is made, and also the copper rod is this copper block is used. That's why this copper block is used to dissipate the heat or take out the heat. So this is how the X-rays are produced. X-rays are in today's time has very wide use in medical science. We already know that. That's all about this class. Thank you.